Christmas morning should have sounded like bells and tissue paper, not shrapnel. "You're such a useless old woman," Amanda said, and her voice sliced straight through the laughter around the table. I stood meeting her gaze and answered with the calm I reserve for bridges in winter storms. "Then stop calling me when you need money." She blinked a twitch of surprise, and in that breath, I felt 42 years of motherhood stiffen into a spine. I didn't know the next hours would carry police lights to my doorstep, or that the truth about my daughter-in-law would open like a trap door beneath our family. I am Margaret Foster, but everyone calls me Maggie, and at 67, I believed I had seen the full menu of family drama. That morning had started like the picture on a holiday card. At exactly 10 a.m., I pulled into my son's Denver driveway with my apple crisp warm under a towel pine and cinnamon perfuming the air as I stepped inside. Emma, 14, sprinted first to hug me. Jake, 16, tried for cool but smiled as he took my coat and the heavy dish. Brian, my boy, who became a gentle man when I looked away, held me a second longer than necessary. Amanda, polished and camera-ready, wore a smile like a perfect bow. "Margaret, so glad you could make it," she said, and for a while, it all felt true. We opened gifts. The kids paraded new clothes and video games. I slipped to the kitchen to help with the feast and saw Amanda's choreography at work timers basting a gleaming table. "Could you grab the desserts?" she asked, lifting the turkey like a trophy. Pumpkin pie, chocolate cake, a store-bought apple tart, no apple crisp. "Where did you put my crisp?" I asked, scanning counters already wiped clean. "Pantry," she said, not looking at me. "We have so much food, and store-bought is easier for cleanup." It was a small sentence that landed like a verdict. I have baked that crisp for 3 decades. Jake still asks for it by name. I kept my voice polite. It's his favorite. "Tastes change," she said with the bored finality of someone closing a door. "Tradition, it turns out, is a fragile bridge. One careless heel can crack it." "I spent 3 hours yesterday making it," I said, heat rising beneath my ribs. Amanda's mask slid with the softest scrape. 3 hours on a dessert no one asked for. "You just assume you're welcome to contribute. Assume we need you here at all." The living room laughter drifted in like from a different house. "I brought dessert because that's what family does," I answered. "I've been doing it longer than you've been part of this family." Her eyes sharpened. "Family doesn't show up and rearrange our refrigerator. Family doesn't critique our parenting. Family doesn't expect to be catered to because they're old." Each example landed with surgical precision, small slights collected, polished, weaponized. "I was trying to help," I said. "You were trying to control?" she said. Then she aimed for the softest part. "Let's talk about the money, the little loans, the cash you slip Brian. You think that doesn't come with strings?" I tried to argue and found only a knot of silence. Love should be generous, not transactional. And yet there are moments I have counted sacrifices in the privacy of my own mind. She saw the flicker and pounced. By the time the table filled again, the room looked the same, only the air had thinned. When dessert came, Emma asked for my crisp, and Amanda lied without a flinch. "Grandma didn't bring it this year." Jake, loyal as a lighthouse, called it out. He had seen the dish in the pantry. Amanda's smile tightened. "We're having what's on the table." Brian missed the barb that followed. Not every tradition deserves to stay because it's old, but I felt it bury to the hilt. After dinner, I offered to help clean, hoping for a word with my son. Amanda orchestrated the exits with military neatness. Brian to the garage, with Jake, Emma upstairs, then turned to me in the quiet clatter of plates. "This is my family, my home, my children," she said. "I decide who belongs. Possession, not partnership," rang through every syllable. "You can't erase me because you feel threatened," I said. She laughed low and mean. "Threatened by a lonely woman in a small apartment who buys attention with checks. The insult found bone. But clarity came with it. Then, let's stop pretending, I said. If my role is financial, treat it like business. No more surprise gifts, no more emergency loans. If you need money, ask directly. We won't use proximity as payment. For the first time, she paled. Brian wandered in oblivious with Jake at his shoulder. The moment buckled, then sealed itself. I gathered my coat, and at the door, carried my untouched apple crisp like a relic. I'm just tired, I told Brian, who looked worried the way men do when the problem is fog instead of fire. Thinking about some changes. He asked me to call if I needed anything, and we both pretended that promise still meant what it used to. The city glowed on my slow drive home windows like small theaters, families framed in warmth, while my own kitchen received me with tea and a pencil. I made a list: every loan, every gift, every bill I had paid just this once. The total shocked me. Not 43,000. More when I counted gift cards, transfers, repairs. Money is only part of the ledger, though. There is also dignity and the cost of buying tolerance disguised as love. My phone kept ringing with Brian's name until I answered. "Mom," he said, breathless, "there's been a situation. Amanda called the police. She says you threatened her. The officers want to speak with you." The floor tilted. 10 minutes later, I was telling a calm, middle-aged officer exactly what I had told Amanda: boundaries, not threats. The officer took notes, glanced at my neatly itemized list of 5 years' emergencies, and closed her notebook with a professional sigh. "This sounds like a family disagreement," she said. When the door shut behind her, the quiet felt different. Not like exile, but like weather finally clearing. I slept lightly the way you sleep on airplanes and in marriages that have quietly failed, and woke before dawn to a strange peace. With the officer's businesslike words still in the air, I began to see the pattern I had refused to trace. At 6 a.m., I brewed tea, pulled my ledger closer, and called my bank when their lines opened. I requested copies of every canceled check to Brian or Amanda over the past 5 years, plus records of transfers tied to one-time emergencies I had covered for home repairs, braces, camp fees, and a mortgage hiccup during a job transition. By 9 a.m., my financial advisor picked up and walked me line by line through withdrawals I barely remembered authorizing. Those small kindnesses everyone tells you are no big deal. When we merged the paper trail, the number became undeniable: more than $67,000, not counting holiday gift cards and the tasteful appliances I purchased as housewarmings. Money, I told myself, can be replaced. But I also wrote a second column, headed with a word I had not let myself say aloud: humiliation, and listed the tiny moments I had paid for entry. The polite smiles, the after-the-fact invitations, the way my calls were returned only on the drive between errands. That second column cost more than any bank statement. By early afternoon, the clarity pushed me out the door. I drove to Brian's neighborhood and parked across from their house, an old habit from the toddler years when I would idle, just to feel near enough to help. At 2:30 p.m., a truck from a boutique furniture store arrived, the kind of place where chairs have names and payment plans. 2 men maneuvered a dining set inside polished wood gleaming like a promise. Half an hour later, Amanda's SUV slid into the driveway, and she stepped out with bags from upscale stores, Nordstrom, Anthropologie places, where cashmere is folded like origami. It was the first weekday after Christmas, and she was decorating a life she had declared too pressured to bear. Watching from the curb, I felt the simple arithmetic of our family snap into focus. My help had become her oxygen. Brian called as I sat there, and for once, I answered on the first ring. He wanted to discuss misunderstandings, to reframe Amanda's police call as upset rather than strategy. "Just curious," I asked, keeping my voice even, "is Amanda home today?" He said she had the day off running errands, maybe some after-Christmas shopping, the kids scattered with friends. I asked him a question I knew he could not answer without flinching. How much did he think I had given their household in 5 years? I told him the figure in words that felt heavier than numbers. he went very quiet. Then he reached for kindness, the good man he is. Even if that's true, he said, you've never made us feel obligated. I heard my own pause, the bitter little hinge of truth opening, and told him what Amanda had said about strings. He tried to explain. I asked him when Amanda had last initiated, including me, not tolerated it, and he offered Christmas Day like a Band-Aid over a fracture. How did that work out? I asked gently. We said goodbye in that careful tone families use when the real conversation has fled the room. That evening, I did what I should have done years earlier. I looked backward with both eyes open. I typed Amanda Mitchell, Denver employment embezzlement and found 3 cases. 2 were clearly different women. The third, Amanda J. Mitchell, 28 in 2014, had been accused of siphoning funds as an office manager and settled out of court. The timing matched the blank space before she met Brian. I clicked through filings until names blurred and still felt unsteady when my phone lit with an unknown number near 8 p.m. Mrs. Foster, a woman asked. Detective Sarah Reeves, Denver Police Financial Crimes. May I ask why you're researching Amanda Mitchell? The ground shifted hard enough to make me grip the table. I answered, because my fear had finally turned to steel. She's my daughter-in-law, I said, and gave the year of the wedding. The detective's voice tightened with purpose. Would you come in tomorrow morning? There are things you should see, and information you can provide may be critical to an ongoing investigation. At 9 a.m. the next day, I sat in a quiet office under fluorescent lights, a folder with Amanda's photo clipped to the front like a hard fact. Detective Reeves explained with the measured calm of someone who has said terrible truths many times. Amanda had used multiple identities for at least a decade. The embezzlement case was only the beginning. There were 2 prior marriages under other names that ended the same way, accounts drained, assets, liquidated exits, choreographed to look like misunderstandings. The children in those households had not been hers by blood. She had left them without a backward glance. Your grandchildren appear to be your sons, the detective said. But your daughter-in-law has been using your generosity to fund a second life, an apartment, a car, under another name, storage units. We believe she is preparing to disappear again. My mind filled with Jake's earnest eyes and Emma's quick hugs, then with the image of boxes sliding into a dark storage bay. Why haven't you arrested her? I asked. The detective steepled her fingers. We are close, but we need evidence of current active fraud that ties her methods to this identity. What you found, the money you've given, your interactions, that can anchor our case. But we need her to expose where the money goes. What followed felt like a heist planned by women who had run out of patience. The detective laid out a sting that relied on a truth Amanda had already spoken. She believed my role was financial. I would offer what she could not resist: an early inheritance, a substantial gift for tax reasons structured to require account numbers, routing details, and proof of balances. If she handled it herself, instead of looping Brian in, we would have her pattern on record. I asked what to do if she suggested we involve him. Then we celebrate, the detective said simply. But I don't think she will. I went home with a folder of instructions and a small microphone the size of a pin. My hands shook once in the doorway, then steadied. At 2 p.m., I called Amanda directly and asked to meet for coffee. My voice sounded the way bridges look after ice, glossy, lethal, intact. She hesitated for half a heartbeat, then agreed. Greed, as the detective had promised, is a musician with predictable timing. We met at a downtown coffee shop with tall windows that spilled winter light across the tables. I arrived first, the microphone hidden, and my hands wrapped around a mug for warmth. Amanda swept in minutes later, perfectly composed eyes, alert but eager. I began, as rehearsed, softening my tone, almost apologetic. I admitted that she had been right about boundaries that I had overstepped, that my love for Brian and the children had sometimes looked like interference. Her shoulders loosened suspicion, giving way to the possibility of triumph. She nodded, gracious in victory. I appreciate you saying that, Margaret. I slid the folder onto the table. I want to make amends in a way that benefits everyone, I said. I'd like to give Brian and the children a substantial gift, about $200,000 structured properly for tax purposes. That way it's secure, and I can step back knowing their future is cared for. Her eyes brightened before she could disguise it. $200,000 was oxygen escape velocity, a new life. She played it calm, sipping her coffee, but her hands betrayed her one quick tremor before she steadied the cup. That's very generous, she said, measured. Of course there are complications with transfers that size. Some of it may need to go into accounts that aren't joint just for convenience. I handle all our finances anyway. The detective had been right. Amanda didn't suggest involving Brian. She reached instinctively for control. I asked for specifics framed as paperwork necessities. Over the next 20 minutes, she rattled off numbers, routing details, even balances leaning closer so no one could overhear. 3 accounts under names I didn't recognize. A supposed consulting company she ran. Investment accounts separate from their household budget. Each word sealed itself onto the hidden recorder. Each detail another stone in the foundation of the case. When I pressed about readiness, she assured me she could prepare everything within days. Then she did what con artists often do when the bait tastes sweet. She attempted to rewrite history. This is the fresh start we need, she said, smiling at me as if Christmas morning hadn't ended in police lights. I excused myself soon after, walking out into the winter air that suddenly felt clean. My phone buzzed before I reached the car. Mrs. Foster, Detective Reeves said we got everything. 3 of those accounts are under false identities. One has been siphoning funds from your son's paycheck. We'll move tomorrow. That night, I barely slept. I stared at my ceiling, thought of Jake's stubborn loyalty at the dinner table, of Emma's arms flung around my waist, of Brian's habit of avoiding storms instead of facing them. I thought of Amanda's shopping bags, the boutique furniture, the storage unit filled with boxes. At 7 a.m., my phone rang. Brian's voice was jagged. Mom, Amanda's been arrested. They say she's wanted in 3 states. They say she's not even who we thought. His words cracked his breath short. I let him pour confusion into the line, offering only what comfort I could. He had been fooled by someone who studied trust the way pickpockets study crowds. His devastation would take years to untangle. That afternoon, alone in my small apartment, I baked the apple crisp. The oats browned perfectly, the apples softened into caramel, the kitchen filled with cinnamon. I sat at the table with a warm slice finally eaten at the right temperature, and reflected on the arc of a single week. In 7 days, I had been insulted, erased, accused, and nearly cast aside. Yet in the same 7 days, I had also uncovered the truth, cooperated with justice, and reclaimed the dignity I had been trading for scraps of belonging. Amanda was in custody, her schemes documented, her exits cut short. Brian was broken, but beginning to see. The children were bewildered, but safe, cocooned in the simple fact that love, unbought, endures. For me, the greatest change was internal. For too long, I had believed love meant sacrifice without limit, that generosity could purchase acceptance, that silence was the same as peace. In truth, love requires boundaries as surely as it requires tenderness. Money given with open hands should never be used as chains by giver or receiver. And respect once surrendered is rarely returned unless you take it back yourself. I had taken mine back late, but not too late. At 67, I had discovered that the sharpest revenge is refusing to be anyone's victim, even when the assailant hides behind family ties. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Share it with someone who might need to be reminded that boundaries are a form of love too. Subscribe for more stories like this, leave a comment with your thoughts, and let me know where you're watching from. And remember, it is never too late to stand up, never too late to reclaim your worth, never too late to live with dignity.